This is the Need to Know podcast from May 11th, 2018, episode number 1.
But when you talk about ultimate impact on the United States, your next generation, current Americans, what's the big blowback and the big impact, you think, from this deal?
The big blowback is that our most important friends around the world don't think they can count on or trust the United States.
And there's our clip.
All right.
So we're starting here. This is
Absolutely. We're starting with the Iran deal. Let's see here. It looks like they're trying to message in the media about how the Iran deal is supposed to affect our allies to see if they can apply pressure to Trump to maybe capitulate. But it doesn't seem like that worked this week.
Especially not with Israel, bombing the shit out of Iranian targets in Syria.
That's true. Go ahead and play clip number 2.
Queuing up.
And Ian Bremmer joins me on set right now. Ian, what's your biggest concern out of this pullout?
My biggest concern in the near term is just that we've, really damaged our credibility with some of our most important allies, the French, the Germans, the United Kingdom. The transatlantic relationship was the most important in the world, underpinning U.S.-led global architecture, right? That's why free markets worked. That's why liberal democracy sort of worked as a system. And we've basically been telling these allies that their opinions don't really matter. And they've made very clear, both Merkel and Macron came over to the United States, and their single most important message to Trump is do not unilaterally leave the Iranian deal. It was very hard to put in place. It's not an ideal deal. We'd like it to be better. We'd like it to be stronger. But we don't have a plan B. And Trump said, you know what? I don't care. I don't care if we don't have plan B. I'm pulling out. Mm-hmm. And, the willingness of those countries to work with us going forward, the willingness to go their own way on broader security issues, on things like technology, on the markets, on, economic trade, they're not seeing the United States as an ally they can really count on. And I think that really hurts when you have a country like China that's spending an awful lot of money, that's doing very well, that seems strategic, that has one leader that's in place for a very long time. That's what worries me the most is the broader unwind. We could definitely see a war between Israel and Iran or Saudi Arabia and Iran, and that'll make oil prices go up. But in the average, the impact that'll have on the United States for the long term is still fairly low. The impact it'll have on the United States in the long term, if our allies just don't think we're credible, and if America First actually does feel like America alone, and so therefore the Chinese increasingly have the model that more people want to listen to, that will play out with the average American over a very long time. That'll affect our kids.
Wow. The things that I took from that are pulling out with no plan B. Presented without context.
Right, and they have nothing to back it up. They're just trying to message and apply pressure, it seems like. This is some real kabuki theater going on.
Oh, I was talking about sex. What were you talking about?
All right.
Lovely.
Actually, I think we have a graphic that shows all of the people that are influential whining about it on social media, including Obama, don't we?
Oh, I believe we do. Let's see where that is.
See if we can pop that up.
In fact, coming right, there we go with the Iran deal.
I think everyone's on there. Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, John Brennan.
Oh, let's go through here. According to Ben
You would think more of these liberals would be a fan of pulling out.
You would think. Oh, let's see here with Ben Rhodes. Trump just created an international crisis with no plan for what comes next. No fallback to maintain constraints on Iran's nuclear program, and no logic other than the hyperbolic anti-Obama talking points more suited to a Fox and Friends, blah, blah, blah. And then we got Barack Obama, who's still calling himself president, chiming in on that. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, Brennan, Eric Holder. The whole cast of characters that we all know and completely and totally dislike. All saying the exact same thing.
Well, Iran is doing its fair share of messaging, and it looks like they had a bunch of lawmakers in their capital burning the American flag and chanting "Death to America" just for extra effect. You want to go ahead and play that one? I think it's number 3.
Of course I want to play that one. I mean, I've been waiting to play that one all day. In fact, here it is.
The fact is, this was a horrible, one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made. It didn't bring calm, it didn't bring peace, and it never will.
Literally burning the American flag. Granted, probably something they printed off of an HP LaserJet, but still.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Thank you, USA Today, for that clip. My God,
Well,
and do they even give a what's their reasoning for why we should stay in the Iran deal?
well, the really interesting part of this whole thing is that on Twitter, the hashtag hostages and hostage were trending at the time that this was coming out. I wasn't able to find any screenshots of the trending area on Twitter when that was happening, but if we could find a screenshot of that or some of the tweets, that would be fantastic. I think we had some submitted, but in my stupor, I may have skimmed by that. That being said,
Actually,
there's more about Iran.
are we moving up?
Yeah, it looks like the president of Iran has come out and made some kind of interesting claims about the deal. Now, I'll warn the chat room. This clip is a little hard because he's speaking through a translator. But it's a really good look at getting to listen to the leader of a country through his own media and seeing what exactly he wants you to see. There's some value in actually being able to see the messaging that was intended. So we'll go ahead and play the clip because it's got some
done everything we could, and we have done a lot to maintain our economical decisions. What we did in relation to our currencies was based on the same decision. We now have an agreement, nuclear agreement without America. Our people will see that our economic growth will continue. There will be peace and stability in the market.
There will be peace.
The needed currency in the future condition will be supplied. In terms of important goods, there should be no worries, these will be supplied. The Iranian nation will, from tonight, will be even more determined. Iranian nation will be even more united from tonight. What Trump did was just a psychological pressure and economical pressure. We will not allow Trump to succeed in putting pressure on Iranian nation in terms of economy or psychology. The history shows that our people have always been victorious against all threats and problems. I have ordered our nuclear organization to be ready for what is needed to be done next. We can enrich, we can economical, we will resume the enrichment for economical needs. We will wait for the next few weeks. We will negotiate and talk to our allies. We will talk to allies and parties who were signatories to the agreement. We will continue to negotiate with them. Everything will be based on our national needs and aims. If the agreement continues, if the agreement continues to benefit us, we will stick to it, and if not, if it's just going to be a piece of meaningless paper, we will know what to do. I give every assurance to Iranian nation that our government has been planning since many months ago to be ready for all possible permutations based on different decisions made by America.
It's not ominous at all.
Not ominous at all. No. They're just telling us that, they're just getting ready to start up their reactors, just in case.
Exactly. This is basically them coming out and saying, look, the other, nations in the world, they're fine with this deal. They're fine with the status quo. And if you don't get in line, we're going to enrich uranium. It's basically North Korea 2.0.
Well, it's kind of the same thing, though. It's a factional nuclear power put in place in order to basically act as a deterrent without being a direct deterrent from whoever is actually controlling them.
Yep. All right. Well, honestly, I think we may have heard enough of him. We have another clip of him. We can play it if you want, or we can skip it. I think it covers some of the same information.
No, I say let's move on.
All right. So, with relation to this, it looks like perhaps some of Obama's closest advisors want to, save the hard work that they did on the Iran deal, and they're running afoul of some of the same charges that Michael Flynn was convicted of. And I think we're about to learn something rather interesting about the Flynn investigation.
President Trump made the historic decision today to withdraw the U.S. from that nuclear deal with Iran. He also signed a memo slapping tough sanctions on the Iranian regime. Well, U.S. allies have complained that leaving the deal could be dangerous. But the president said it's more dangerous to keep the deal in place.
The Iran deal is defective at its core. If we do nothing, we know exactly what will happen. In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. At the heart of the Iran deal was a giant fiction that a murderous regime desired only a peaceful nuclear energy program. Today, we have definitive proof that this Iranian promise was a lie.
On top of that, more huge news. The president announced that the time, date, and location have been set for a summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is now in North Korea for a second time to pave the way for the talks.
And there we go with that. I don't even know what to say here.
You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think
you'll recover. But it's kind of interesting what we just learned a little bit there. Let's keep going on here. There's an interview that Devin Nunes did, and he's got that juicy info about Flynn.
Oh, Devin Nunes and his juicy info here.
Joining us first, we begin with Devin Nunes. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's a California congressman. Congressman, you say that you will move to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress. Explain how they have been slow walking, using redactions in the name of national security that turn out not to be true, and how they have been unwilling to answer Congress's subpoena, and how that is the constitutional role of Congress.
Well, thanks, Sean. First of all, you don't have enough time left on your show in order for me to get to all of the stonewalling that DOJ and FBI have done throughout our investigation. Let's just maybe pick a few at the top. Just last week, after 6 weeks, we discovered that for the first time, the American people now know that James Comey testified before Congress that he was not, that the FBI agents that interviewed Flynn didn't think he was lying. It took us 6 weeks for the FBI and DOJ to get rid of those redactions. That was finally released late on a Friday night. If you go
Didn't
back
think
to
he was
the things that
lying.
they've dealt with, if you look at with Fusion
Nobody thought
GPS
she'd
and getting
lose.
documents that were pertinent for that fight, that's just another good example of the fact that we weren't able to figure out that the FBI and DOJ actually knew that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee had paid for the dirt on.
How long did they know
on the
that, sir?
Trump
Because
campaign.
we didn't find out, if I'm correct, for a year later.
Well, look, we believe that they knew it. They knew it basically from the very beginning.
Wait, that would mean they knew that Clinton paid for it when they made the FISA application, and they never verified the Clinton dossier by a foreign agent citing unverified Russian sources. They knew all of this. Did they lie to a FISA judge?
Well, they know things. Here's the funny thing: is that they know things. They know things that aren't true, like the fact that James Comey testified and even said on Brett Baer's show that Republicans had started the dossier. So that wasn't true. Now, what is true is that the Democratic Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for the dirt, but of course, Mr. Comey didn't tell that to Congress.
So
now,
he
let's
lied.
get to
Because Christopher Steele was not brought in. I saw that interview. He was not brought in until Hillary started paying that bill, correct?
Well, we don't know. He had been I think he had been a source before, or he had been affiliated. But the bottom line is that at about the same time, the FBI started getting information. At the same time, the DNC was paying Mr. Steele. So we know that much. So now we get to. So let's get to where we're at today. We sent a letter 2 weeks ago to the Department of Justice, a classified letter. They ignored that letter. We had to then issue a subpoena last week. We issued a subpoena. Then finally on Thursday, they got back to us and said they weren't going to comply with the subpoena. Now, over the course of the last few days, they continued to leak ridiculous stories, leak stories of classified meetings that occurred at the White House. That, quite frankly, some of us weren't even aware of these meetings, but they're coming to us with accusations that clearly had to have been leaked by the Department of Justice and the FBI.
How soon will you hold Jeff
learned.
Sessions in contempt?
Look, so I want to talk to Mr. Sessions. So Attorney General Sessions said today that he wants to discuss things. That's good. I want to talk to him. I actually don't believe that Mr. Sessions saw my letter. I really don't. I don't think the Attorney General saw it. So then we had to move to the subpoena, which I'm sure he found out about that. But at the end of the day, he's in charge there. I think there's enough information now that the that's out there now between what you saw in the court that you had in your monologue on Friday. Wow. I think the Attorney General should. I mean, at some point, the recusal gets ridiculous.
I am befuddled and bewildered. Look, for example, there's a great piece by Andrew McCarthy. Why all the secrecy? Outrageous redactions to the Russia report. Rod Rosenstein, up to the final minute, we would never have gotten the Nunes memo or the Grassley-Graham report about FISA abuse because Rod Rosenstein, according to my sources, was begging Paul Ryan not to hand that information that you subpoenaed way in advance, and he waited to the last hour to hand it over. Why is Rod Rosenstein doing this? Why are the FBI refusing to pursue the personal struck page text when we know there are gaps missing in that? And at what point do we see this as an obstruction case?
Well, I agree with you that they should just stop digging. I don't know what's going on in their minds. I mean, there's enough information out there now. They should know that what's occurred here now was inappropriate. They know that they can't investigate themselves. And so, you know, if you want to actually get to solving the problem, just stop making the problem worse. Give us the information in a timely manner. I mean, just give us all the information. Just give it to us so that the investigators that have the oversight role can properly go through everything. But when the more that they spread this out bit by bit by bit, the more ridiculous they look and the more dishonest they look and the more corrupt that it looks to the American people.
If I've been wrong, I know you follow the show. I only have 20 seconds. Is there anything I've been wrong about on this show? Because it now seems to everything is now falling into place, and we see what's happening. And Rod Rosenstein said the Justice Department won't be extorted. Last word. You have about 20 seconds.
Yeah, that statement was totally ridiculous. They just need to give us the documents, Sean. Look, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. There's a lot more information out there that the American public deserves a right to know. And you have not been wrong on anything that I've seen, but you know what your challenge is? You haven't seen all the information, and you have a right to see it, and it's worse.
Damn right it's worse.
Yeah, it is getting worse. So, you know, that in mind, it kind of puts a new slant on the whole John Kerry stuff, because, you know, they got Flynn on that damn Logan Act, which, you know, we complained on our side of the aisle that it was a problem, and because it was an outdated document. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, they want to overturn the damn act just so that John Kerry can meddle in foreign affairs.
I think we have a couple of videos for that.
John, if we go back to the previous interview, John Bolton has a lot to say about that, but I wanted to make sure that we preloaded you guys with this information about Flynn, because it's kind of a new revelation.
President Trump made the historic decision today to withdraw the U.S. from that nuclear deal with Iran.
I apologize for that. Wrong clip. Right clip.
This is a big day today. You know, people are freaking out.
Growing pains.
The usual suspects are freaking out, and then a couple of other not so usual suspects. This is what, though, the Democrats said about this deal back in 2015 when Obama had negotiated. Let's watch.
The whole purpose of our negotiation was to ensure that there would be no pathway for Iran to achieve nuclear weapons capability. And this deal doesn't achieve that.
This agreement is too flawed and too dangerous for us.
I read the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action last night, over 100 pages. I'll be honest, I was skeptical going in. There's nothing that I read last night that alleviates my skepticism.
Look, the fact is the deal has been flawed from the beginning. I think the president laid that case out in his statement today. He gave the Europeans and others a chance to fix it. It was not doable because the flaws go right to the foundations of the deal. So he did what he clearly advertised he was going to do as far back as the 2016 campaign, pulled the United States out of the deal. Why? Because it's in our security interest to get out of this flawed deal.
John Kerry today explained why he was doing his own little version of talking to Iran.
Until today, until this afternoon, the policy of the United States of America was to be in the Iran agreement. Until today, our nation remained one of the guiding forces within that agreement, and only today did the policy change. My conversations with these people are the normal conversations that I assure you every former Secretary of State has with leaders in other countries, and all I did was suggest to them, look, you guys really ought to try to keep the agreement.
Look, John Kerry's objective was to get a deal. So it's not surprising John Kerry's objective today was to keep the deal. It's the wrong objective. The objective should be to prevent Iran from getting deliverable nuclear weapons. The deal not only didn't accomplish that objective, in many ways it facilitated Iran's efforts. So what President Trump did by pulling out of the deal is get back to what the real objective should be, stopping this dangerous regime from threatening us and our friends around the world with nuclear weapons.
John Brennan, another good pal of yours, a former CIA director, he said this about how the whole development with the Iran deal could affect our conversation with North Korea. Let's watch.
Well, I can't understand how it helps in any way the ongoing discussions with North Korea and the efforts to try to denuclearize the peninsula. It totally undercuts the credibility of America's word.
It totally undercuts the credibility of America's word. And yet, while they said that, we had peace, and we've now got peace in North Korea.
Yeah, exactly. And Trump is up for possibly 2 Nobel Prizes.
Huh. Who saw that
Make
coming?
America great again, by the way.
MAGA. MAGA all day, every day.
It's kind of interesting, though, that the CIA has such a heavy hand in our diplomacy these days, isn't it? You know, with Mike Pompeo going to North Korea, and you know, we have John Brennan commenting on the Iran deal and doing the deal with Kerry back in the day.
Now, my question. Sorry to interrupt you there. With Mike Pompeo going to the CIA, Mike Pompeo going to North Korea. If we're being told about all these supposed White House leaks, how did that not leak? How did that not come out? How did nobody just know about that?
I guess you don't get to be director of the CIA without having a few tricks up your sleeve, huh?
All I have to say to that is true that.
All right. I think, you know, speaking of that, it's a good time to kind of transition over to our North Korea coverage. You know, recently we've had the North Korean peace talks, and we've got some clips about the North Korean denuclearization, at least the preliminary agreements. And this is a really good showcase of kabuki theater and messaging between different governments about intention.
Before we start this up, I just want to say I'm so glad that we're able to actually see this happen in our lifetime.
It's pretty amazing.
All right, let's roll the clip. Look at that. Rocket Man striding across the border.
Is that a pack of hot dogs on the back of his neck? Look at all the things that they have to do together. They're signing documents, playing sports together, just all these very symbolic actions of friendship.
I would hate to be the bureaucrat that has to file that paperwork, though. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. That's...
What do you talk about a despot? Like, what do you talk to the despot about?
I don't know. What would you say to... Oh, God, no. What would you say to Hitler if he came back alive for one day?
Please don't throw people in ovens.
Well, no, it already happened.
Please don't conquer Europe. Please don't do that.
And yet nobody's talking about that either. We're just kind of all hippied up in this whole peace things, but at the same time they have concentration camps and everything going on in that country that we're kind of ignoring right now. To me, that doesn't feel good, although I'm glad for the peace. But honestly, we need to do something about the human rights violations that have gone on in that country.
I agree. We got to move one step at a time, though. You know, they both made statements about the meeting, and I think that's our next clip, clip number 10.
We had a historical meeting and reached a very precious and valuable agreement. There will not be any more war on the Korean Peninsula. The new era of peace has finally opened. As I stand here today, I can see that South and North Korea are the same people, the same blood, that they cannot be separated together. We are the compatriots.
I never imagined his voice as a woman.
I know, right? It's kind of an interesting choice for them. You know, you were talking about human rights violations, and there has been a little bit of movement in that area.
Oh?
Yeah, actually, it looks like the Trump administration was able to secure the release of 3 hostages from North Korea, the 3 that were in question, in fact. And we have a video for that.
3. All right, let's roll this video then.
3 American hostages finally back on U.S. soil after being held captive in North Korea for more than a year. Greg Palkut, live in London with who these men are and how they ended up imprisoned in the rogue nation. Greg, good morning.
Hi, Todd. Good morning. Yes, another rare instance of good news coming from North Korea. Maybe there will be more to come. The return, as we have been watching in the last couple hours, of these 3 Korean Americans, American citizens, held in captivity by the regime for as long as 2.5 years. Much of that we have now learned under, quote, difficult conditions. They are Kim Sang-duk, or Tony Kim. He was seized last April in North Korea. Kim Hak-song, detained a few weeks later. They both worked at a Christian-backed university in Pyongyang. And Kim Dong-chul, a businessman, he was arrested in October of 2015. All said to be and looking this morning in good health, walking around, giving the V sign, etc. All 3 were accused of subversive acts against the regime, even spying. Kim Dong-chul was actually convicted and sentenced to 10 years of hard labor. He noted that hard labor in his brief comments a short while ago. Central to the release of these 3, of course, the policies, the actions of the Trump administration. That includes Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. It was his meeting yesterday with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang that sealed the deal. From these 3 ex-hostages, we have received this statement of gratification. They say, and I quote, "We would like to express our deep appreciation to the United States government, President Trump, Secretary Pompeo, and the people of the United States for bringing us home."
Wow. So Trump got 3 hostages back. And it's only been like a little bit over a year now.
You know, he's really making good on his campaign promises. But, you know, to be fair, credit where credit is due, I really don't think we would have seen this much movement if Mike Pompeo hadn't gone out there. And I wonder if maybe he has his CIA ties to thank for that. And I don't know if maybe I'm just trying to use clairvoyance through my tinfoil when I say that. But, you know, maybe there's something there that we'll find out in the future.
That's actually a really good thought, BB.
All right. So from North Korea, I think it's time to transition to the rest of the Middle East. We've talked a lot about Iran and the nuclear deal because that's really taken center stage this week. But let's talk a little bit our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel. And things are starting to heat up between Israel and Syria. Play clip number 12, if you would, please.
Our top story is from the Middle East. Israel has retaliated for an attack on its troops by targeting what it says was Iran's military infrastructure inside Syria. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the airstrikes were appropriate.
In his words, Iran crossed a red line with Wednesday's missile attack on Israeli forces in the Golan Heights. Israel warns that any further aggression will be met with overwhelming force.
The region remains tense but relatively quiet right now amid international calls for calm. Russia, the UK, and the European Union have all urged restraint. CNN correspondents are tracking the latest developments across the region. Ian Lee is in Jerusalem, Matthew Chance live in Moscow, and we begin with Ben Wiedemann in Beirut. Ben, this is a serious escalation in the Middle East. Question is, why now, and where could it lead?
Well, I think this is an escalation that's been building up really since the beginning of the year. Back in February, when Israel shot down what it said was an armed drone that entered Israeli airspace, the Israelis shot down that drone, then targeted Iranian positions or facilities inside Syria. An Israeli F-16 was shot down by Syrian air defenses, and it's been escalating ever since. But certainly the American decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal really did give a green light to Israel to begin to actively or aggressively pursue Iranian targets in Syria. It was less than an hour after President Trump made that announcement that the Israelis started to strike targets inside Syria. Now, it's significant that more than 24 hours after this supposed Iranian missile strike on targets in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. The Israelis have yet to actually come forth with any piece of a missile to prove that Iran was behind it. The Iranians, until now, have been rather coy on whether they were behind this missile attack or not. And certainly the only missiles we've seen was a stray surface-to-air missile that landed here in Lebanon. So there's still many questions about what exactly happened. Now, at the moment, it does appear that things are calming down a bit. The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, speaking to his French counterpart, did express a desire for a de-escalation in the area. Apparently the Russians, I'm sure my friend Matthew will tell us more, are trying to also calm the situation down. The Russians, significantly, are the only ones who are talking with all the parties involved. The United States, of course, has no relations with Syria, isn't talking with the Iranians, so in a sense they're sitting on the sidelines.
How did they shoot down the F-16 with only a stray jet? Per Dawn Girl on Twitch.
Right.
Doesn't.
Oh, man. All right, so I'm looking here. It looks like we have another clip to follow that up with. You know, that whole segment that they did, his interview was actually pretty good because the messaging there and the way they kind of twist their words, but does kind of give a little bit of insight into what's going on over there and between Israel and Syria. Let's play the rest of the clip.
Just a little bit of insight. Moving on.
Has been strangely quiet about the explosive events of the past couple days until now.
That country's foreign ministry has now issued a statement condemning the Israeli strikes. It reads as follows: the Zionist regime's multiple strikes on the Syrian soil and the blatant violation of the country's sovereignty, especially in recent days, was a clear act of aggression and a potent example of the crisis-seeking, lie-oriented, and domineering nature of this regime, which wouldn't like to see stability, security, and tranquility in the region. Now, just a word to our viewers of context. It's very interesting that Iran has not officially acknowledged whether or not it had indeed fired rockets into Israel, which is, according to Israel, what triggered this volley back and forth of missiles across the border.
So that's what triggered that volley? That's what triggered everything that happened on Sunday?
No, that would be Iran's response to Syria. What we do have, though, is the actual claim from Israel that Iranian forces fired rockets into their nation. And I think that's clip number 14, and that's sourced from Fox News. So we have a little bit of a counterpoint here between Fox News and CNN. You can kind of see that in their message.
I'm starting to get that now. Let's roll the clip.
Hi, Shep. Well, there's an uneasy calm which has fallen over this country. Children were back at school in the Golan Heights today, but waiting to see what might happen tonight. But make no mistake, this was a major event. As you say, this was the first time Iran had directly attacked Israel from across the border in Syria, and it was the largest air operation carried out by Israel since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. What people are saying here is that this was a clear sign to Iran that they cannot encroach on the borders of Israel anymore, and we've seen that happen over the last few years. They have moved some of their troops and set up some sort of bases in Syria. Last night we saw them react to that, and we saw Israel react in a very big way. Israel have also been saying for some time that they expected an Iranian attack. And actually, the last few days we've seen Israel move some people up to the Golan Heights. We've seen more Iron Dome forces up there. And that's because these cross-border raids by Israel have supposedly been going on for some time, picking out Iranian targets there. So this was the escalation, and Iran sending a clear message that it won't do anything by half measure. And in fact, just earlier today, the defense minister said, if it rains in our country, it will pour in yours. And many people saying that's exactly what we saw last night. 50 targets hit by Israeli jets, taking out all of the Iranian military emplacements in Syria. So a very significant evening last night here. Shep?
What are we learning about the reports of the rockets which precipitated that? The reports that the Iranians fired into Israeli territory?
Well, that is how this started off. Just after midnight over here, reports of around 20 rockets fired by Iranians. What's also interesting here is the Syrian connection. Very quickly, the Syrian government tried to distance itself from this move, and although those rockets were fired from inside Syrian territory, the Syrian government has said it had no part to play. And that's because Benjamin Netanyahu has always said, if Syria is seen to be helping the Iranians and taking a part in this, helping them set up bases and launch attacks, we will get involved in the Syrian conflict. And of course, nobody wants the balance of power changing over there, not least Iran, not least Russia. And it was very interesting yesterday to see Benjamin Netanyahu meeting with President Putin in Moscow, and it was widely thought that he was going to ask President Putin to try and rein in his allies in Syria, i.e. the Iranians, and persuade them not to launch attacks like this. The fact that they went ahead and did it anyway does ask the question, how much influence does Russia have over the Iranians anymore? There are reports that this was carried out by Qasem Soleimani, the infamous head of the Al-Quds force, and whether he was operating with consent from Iran, the hierarchy of Iran, we just don't know. So a lot of moving pieces over here. Remember, this is a geopolitical cauldron at the moment, a real mess. But things have calmed down at the moment, but tonight is the big question. Does Iran respond for that massive military strike against their facilities in Syria?
So does that make Iran now a official rogue state? Like, official?
Well, we're going to have to wait and see the fallout. You know, a lot of this plays out in the political realm. So the really international law doesn't really matter. It matters on what they're allowed to get away with by the rest of the community.
True. Bella in our Twitch chat just asked a question. Putin hasn't said anything about this, has he?
You know, I haven't seen what Putin said about it yet, but that doesn't mean he hasn't. So we'll probably have an update to this story next week. You know, there's more stuff happening in the Middle East, too. We should probably touch on the situation between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. It looks like Saudi Arabia is tired of dealing with the Houthi rebels now.
Witnesses say they heard warplanes overhead before two loud explosions as bombs hit the presidential office in the center of Houthi-controlled Sana'a. The strikes damaged not only the intended target, but also businesses and houses nearby.
A jet targeted the presidential office. The neighborhood is full of people and employees were at work.
Imagine
we rushed
your
to
neighborhood
rescue people
looking
who
like
were
that.
there. We were trying to rescue a man from underneath a car and a child, but a second airstrike targeted us with no mercy for human beings.
Citizens have nothing to do with what is going on. We are not leaders. No leaders work in these offices. We are doing our routine daily work.
A spokesman for the Saudi-led coalition defended the airstrikes, saying they targeted a high-level meeting of Houthi leaders.
Targeting the presidential palace was targeting first and second-rate Houthi leadership. There was confirmed intelligence information. They were monitored through intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems.
Saudi Arabia and its allies have been fighting against the Houthis since 2015, when they intervened to support Yemen's internationally recognized government, led by President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi. After 3 years of fighting and no end to the war in sight, analysts say the Saudi-led coalition has changed tactics and is concentrating on targeting Houthi leaders. But it's a risky strategy. Houthi fighters and their supporters say they're more determined than ever to continue their fight for control of Yemen. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera.
How could...
It's rough.
There's just real people there, and this is just happening.
Yeah, and it happens around the world all the time. And, I think a lot of people lose touch with that. There are real consequences for warfare around the world.
For reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
That's true, and we spent a lot of time talking about everybody else's military. I guess it's time to start talking about ours. There was actually some big news with the Navy this week.
That was about the Second Fleet being back in operation, wasn't that?
Correct. They're recommissioning the Second Fleet, and I think that's clip number 16.
All right, let's roll it.
The U.S. Navy says its Second Fleet will be back in commission this summer, operating out of Norfolk, Virginia. The fleet, which was eliminated in a cost-cutting move 7 years ago, is being reestablished to counter what the Pentagon calls a rising threat from Russia. At a ceremony in Norfolk on Friday, Admiral John Richardson, Chief of Naval Operations, said, Our national defense makes it clear that we are back in an era of great power competition as the security environment continues to grow more challenging and complex. Russia's Navy has stepped up patrols in the Atlantic, and both Russia and NATO have been building up forces in Eastern Europe at levels not seen in decades. While Russia has fewer ships than it did during the height of the Cold War, U.S. officials are especially concerned about its expanded submarine fleet and increased presence in the Atlantic Ocean. But one military expert sees this more as saber-rattling than an outright threat of war.
I think what the Russians will do is probably over time react with more submarines operating in the Atlantic, more messages to us that beware. But I think that this will be kept at a relatively low level, and I really don't see a huge escalation or any escalation proceeding from these actions.
The U.S. Second Fleet will be responsible for an area extending halfway across the Atlantic and will include a staff of more than 200. Diane Estabrook, Al Jazeera.
Yeah.
7 years out of
big
commission.
Move.
7 years out of commission. I wonder why.
There was a man in office at that time. I think his name was Obama. He wasn't a big fan of the military.
Oh yeah, that guy. Right.
You know, I kind of thought that this was a reaction to our military our military buildup. But one of our viewers, our volunteers, shout out to the chat room and shout out to the Discord from overseas, informed me that this is actually pretty standard fare for our Russian counterparts. Victory Day just happened in Russia, and they took the opportunity to showcase some new military hardware. But I thought that since we got the information from him that this isn't actually a response militarily, we might want to present it, because I even made the mistake myself of thinking it was a response to Trump's military buildup.
That's what I had assumed too. But let's roll the clip and see. You just gotta love the colors.
Big brass. There's the MiG-31s.
Those are some nice looking jets. Well, gee, I wonder what kind of messaging they were trying to give out with that. Not necessarily Russia, but maybe more or less The Guardian, who this clip came from.
Yep. You gotta wonder, sometimes those in mainstream media, they're trying to push a narrative and see if they can't make a story out of it and build some profit.
Profit, money makes the world go round.
That's exactly it. All right, so that's pretty much all we have for U.S. military, and I think it's time for us to transition to our second big story of the show. This week has been a really hot week for New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and it looks like it's going to be a big turning point in his career. Let's find out what's going on with him. Steven has something to say about that, I think, in clip 18.
All right, let's see.
Calling someone a fat, disgusting retard. No, take it, I give it to you, Mongoloid. Drink your bourbon. Drink it. You gotta do the Special Olympics for me. That's indicative of just a black, filthy soul. First question of the day. As it relates to the Schneiderman issue, I mean, do you really think that no one knew about this kind of a scandal? This guy was a darling of the New York leftist elite. And his abuses are almost too numerous to count. Is it possible, Your Honor, that we never heard about it before this leak for the same reason that the front page CNN article covering this story today didn't showcase any of the facts that I'm about to fill you in on?
Always good to have some Crowder there.
I love Crowder. He's great. So, since we got that nice little intro from Crowder, let's go directly into the Attorney Schneiderman scandal with the judge. He's got some information on whether or not he's eligible for jail time.
All right, let's see.
Judge Napolitano, this guy was integral, remains integral, and his name attached to so many Wall Street-related cases, harassment cases, you name it.
And many of the challenges of the Trump administration, which were waged by state attorneys general, he's the lead challenger, meaning his office prepared the papers and his office does the work, and the other attorneys general, like our home state of New Jersey, just sort of hop along for the ride. I don't think any of that is going to change. I don't know Barbara Underwood, but I would imagine she was his deputy. She is likely to be of the same mindset, and clearly the legislature will pick somebody for the 8 months remaining in this year who will be of the same mindset, and the people who will choose who they want, undoubtedly a Democrat, this is New York, in the election in November.
He's got that eyeliner on.
That whoever that person is would pick up the baton and pursue these cases, but a lot of them would be coming in just getting familiar with the cases themselves. There would certainly be some delay, right?
There's always a little bit of a delay when you change leadership, but these cases are really worked. People who do the preparing of the paperwork and the examination of the documents and engaging with adversaries at a couple of levels below the AG. This is the permanent class of career prosecutors, so that's not going to change. And the direction of those cases is not going to change. The public face of them will change. It's interesting, though, he attempted to make his mark by going after Harvey Weinstein for a behavior not unlike what brought him down.
You know, he was the face of this whole Me Too movement, if you think about it.
Yes, it wasn't very effective until yesterday.
So he is claiming, he didn't deny the allegations per se, as much saying what this was, consensual
pound
part
Me
of these
Too.
women and himself. But where does this go?
Well, without getting lurid, even weird and bizarre and physically painful behavior consented to by adults as part of a unique relationship is lawful. So if Cy Vance indicts him, because these events occurred in New York City, where he's the district attorney, the local prosecutor, then it will be he said versus four she said if there's actually a trial. I doubt there'd be a trial. This is the type of thing that begs for a plea agreement, because a trial would expose, details that we really aren't happy about listening to. But if he could persuade a jury that these four ladies who profoundly say it was not consensual did consent, he's home free. If they did not consent, he's facing a lot of jail time. I mean, there is not only physical violence, there's racial.
How would you prove that they didn't consent unless they filed reports prior or no?
We don't know if they filed reports prior. It sounds like they didn't, because if they had, we'd know about it. Those reports would be public.
Some of these were fairly recent, too, right?
It would be their word, the four of them, against him. He'd have to take the witness stand and deny it, and a jury would decide who they believed.
The fact that this was so fast and that he resigned, obviously the governor telling him to, virtually everyone told him, I mean, it was boom.
It must have been bubbling below the surface, and the governor and the political class must have known about it, and the press didn't get their hands on it until last night. I have not seen a resignation on the basis of just allegations this fast in recent years. I can't even think of one that happened this quickly.
This is one of the most tawdry cases that the tabloids and newspapers are on top of. In your description of what happened, not once did you get even borderline tawdry, which makes you the superstar legal mind you are.
Now, if you want that tawdry stuff discussed in detail, where's Gasparini?
Exactly. We're going to balance that out. Judge, you are the best, my friend, time and again and again and again.
Pleasure.
I don't know what to make of that.
Well, basically, if they have what they need, he could be facing a lot of jail time, and an ironic jail time at that. It seems like.
I'm going to use that for now on ironic jail time. I'm going to use that phrase.
Right. Just remember, everyone that's watching, we are still looking for episode titles. So keep thinking of that and throw them at us after the show is over.
We'll take as many suggestions as we can get.
Yeah, exactly. So, other people in New York had something to say about this. One of them being New York Governor. Go ahead and play clip number 20. I think it's Andrew Cuomo.
revelations about Attorney
Andrew
General
Cuomo.
Eric Schneiderman were shocking, disturbing, and just really in a political environment where
Volume might be a
almost
tad low on this clip. I
nothing
apologize.
seems surprising anymore. I have tremendous accolades for the women who came forward. That is the essence of this Me Too movement and this Me Too moment. Women who have suffered for many years from sexual harassment, having the courage to come forward.
That's the face of, oh dear God, it could happen to me.
All across society. We've seen it in media, we've seen it in corporate, we've seen it in film, we've seen it in government.
Why is he on a boat?
I think these women were especially courageous.
Because he's a boss.
They were dealing with the Attorney General, the top law enforcement. According to the article, they were threatened not to say anything, and they came forward anyway. And that is to be applauded individually, and I think that collective movement is to be applauded. Change comes when people demand change, and change comes when the problem is revealed and exposed. That is always step one. And what you're now seeing is women standing up all across the country and saying, this nation has a chronic, disturbing, disgusting behavior of sexual harassment against women, and it has gone on for a long, long time.
The whole
and
nation
it must stop.
Whole nation.
The whole nation full of rapists.
So, did he look like he was holding that thing like he was the announcer on The Price is Right, like Bob Barker style, holding it with his fingertips? A little awkward.
Well, everybody holds it differently.
All right. So after the governor spoke out, actually, that was when Attorney General Eric Schneiderman resigned. Let me get the frog out of my throat, Keck.
Praise Keck.
Let's go ahead and play number 21 while I go ahead and try to fix my throat.
All praise unto Keck. Clip 21.
The New York Attorney General resigning tonight after accusations of physical violence by 4 women. I want to bring in the players now. CNN senior media correspondent Brian Stelter is here, political commentator Bakari Sellers, and CNN legal analyst Laura Coates, a former federal prosecutor. Again, Brian, this is a fast-moving story. Many of the details just developing now. Of course, he is resigning. The women accusing him, Schneiderman, of non-consensual physical violence hours after the story broke. The governor asked him to resign, and he is resigning tonight. Breaking news.
Yes, a public official who, in public, was an outspoken proponent of the Me Too movement, who has brought a lawsuit against Harvey Weinstein, his brother Bob, and the Weinstein Company, who has been trying to drive a path forward for New York State as an opponent to the Trump administration. All of that is the context for tonight's shocking developments. It took exactly 3 hours from the time the New Yorker published a story with allegations of physical abuse by Schneiderman. 2 women on the record, 2 other women speaking or sharing details anonymously through the 2 on the record women. Bottom line down, 4 women accusing this man of physical abuse. His response is that it was always consensual sex, but this is not just about sex. These allegations are about abuse. They are about violence that actually led to some of these women going to the hospital. Bottom line, 3 hours after the story hits, he resigns. I'm told the work of the office, the AG's office, will continue. That's an important point to keep in mind. The lawsuits, the work against Trump, all that continues. But the man on the top, he's gone.
Yeah.
So he had to resign then.
Because the DOJ is going to stop.
Okay, so that makes New York City with, not city, but New York without an attorney general, doesn't it?
So, after this whole debacle happened and Eric Schneiderman had to step down, that created an opening in New York City for attorney general. And, it's a funny story. One of our guys, producer Enoch, actually got us a image for the Twitter trends at the time. And crazy liberals, they think that they can get Hillary Clinton back in the political atmosphere, back in the political realm. You got that image?
Yeah, I've got it up on screen right now.
Ah, there it is.
Look at that. What's that top? Hashtag Met Gala. Eric Schneiderman, New York AG. Eric Schneiderman accused of physically abusing 4 women. Hashtag all caps and some kind of bird symbol. Hashtag unlikely Seinfeld plots. Okay, I just got a sidestep there. I fucking love Seinfeld, so I'm going to check that one out later.
Yep.
Hashtag with my last quarter. Hashtag makes Hulk angry. Hashtag, oh crap, that's the one we're looking for, isn't it? Hashtag HRC for NYAG.
Yeah, it looks like some Twitter users out there want Hillary Clinton to come back. Too bad she's decided that she wants to stay in New Zealand. JK, I wish. So, we still have more on this Eric Schneiderman bit. Actually, Ben Shapiro had some interesting things to say on his podcast, and that's clip number 22 from the Ben Shapiro Show.
Took sedatives. Now, the thing that's hilarious about all of this is you'll recall that Schneiderman was a hero to the left until 5 minutes ago. Right now, listen, this is not the fault of everybody on the left who didn't know that Schneiderman was doing all of these things, but it is worthwhile noting that those who are held up as heroes very rarely are. Samantha Bee, of course, just a few weeks ago, was talking about how Eric Schneiderman was going to save the country from Donald Trump.
But there is hope on the horizon. A hero who stood up to democracy's nemesis before. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
I'm Eric Schneiderman, and I'm the Attorney General of the state of New York. And with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh my God. He's Schneiderman.
Oh God.
Does whatever a Schneider can. Only he can save us all.
No, it is not going to be one hero. It's not going to be a quick fix for this.
And this white mamba might be the one to save us.
We're going to save ourselves together.
You're going to save us.
We're going to do it. But that requires a lot of people other than state attorneys general getting engaged.
Please be my hero.
Okay, that is Samantha Bee. Okay, and this is what the left wants. The left was looking for a hero. They picked the wrong guy. It turns out they sort of picked the wrong guy. Oopsie daisy. Now, what is hilarious about this is that a lot of people in New York have known that Schneiderman is a kook for a really long time. One of those people is Donald Trump. So here is Donald Trump tweeting about Eric Schneiderman from not all that long ago, right? This is August 2013. Do you ever sometimes wonder if President Trump is actually a hero from the future who's sent back to the past to warn us all of what's to come? Because when you look at his Twitter feed, there's a tweet for literally everything. It's like Terminator 2. He's been sent from the future in order to protect us from Eric Schneiderman. This is him in August 2013. Quote, wow, I just found out that A.G. Schneiderman met with President Obama in Syracuse on Thursday and sued me on Saturday. Same as IRS, etc. And then he said that Schneiderman was a freak. Okay, but this is back in 2013. Thug politics, lightweight hack, meets Schneiderman, meets with Obama on Thursday, then brings frivolous suit on Saturday. And there was more of this. He continued to tweet about Schneiderman. Governor Cuomo is right about one thing. Attorney General Eric Schneiderman does wear eyeliner. What the hell is up with him? And finally, is there one more? And then he says, Wiener is, this is the one that's amazing. This is from September 2013. Wiener is gone. Spitzer is gone. Next will be lightweight AG Eric Schneiderman. Is he a crook? Wait and see. Worse than Spitzer or Wiener. Well, there he is. There's the man from the future warning you about what was to come. And was Donald Trump ever right? He was indeed. It turns out that Eric Schneiderman is, in fact, the worst kind of human. Now, there are a couple...
Wow. So he just kind of said all that back in 2013, eh?
Yeah, so maybe Trump was sent from the future to protect us. How do you like that? I caught that on Ben Shapiro's show when I was on my commute, and I just had to bring it into the show.
Oh, that kind of brings a whole new aspect to the entire Andrew Breitbart thing, doesn't it?
Absolutely does. All right. So, we touched on the Harvey Weinstein investigation with Eric Schneiderman. Why don't we go ahead and take a blast to the past and talk a little bit about that in clip number 23.
We've been conducting an investigation for more than 4 months into the Weinstein Company, and our investigation, as demonstrated by the petition filed yesterday, uncovered a pervasive pattern of sexual harassment, intimidation, discrimination, and abuse at the Weinstein Company. And it is clear to us, and is set forth in our complaint, that the company's management was complicit in this pattern of misconduct. They knew what was happening. It was flagrant. It was flamboyant. They knew how pervasive it was. And not only did they fail to stop it, they enabled it and covered it up. Whenever there is sexual abuse, harassment, or discrimination, the individual perpetrator may face liability, but the corporate entity has a legal duty to protect employees. So if you see a complaint against any corporation or against a government entity, the individual perpetrator is named, but the corporate entity or the government entity also has liability. So what we're talking about is a pervasive corporate culture that enabled, encouraged, and sustained years of abusive conduct that should have been shut down by any corporate officers with any sense of integrity. This is important. There was never, in all the years covered by our investigation, and this is a company that I operated with Mr. Weinstein at its helm from 2005 to 2017, there was not one actual investigation by the management or human resources into any one of these complaints, which you're legally required to do if you are a company. And you have policies which you are required by law to have prohibiting this form of discrimination, abuse, and harassment.
Thanks, The Guardian, for that clip.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good one, and it's nice in stark contrast to what we just learned about A.G. Schneiderman, huh? Looking back, it's pretty crazy.
Yes, it is. It just goes to show you that anybody is capable of these things, isn't it? Doesn't it?
Absolutely. That being said, before we go into our kind of high note, positive news story, fun fluff piece for the week, I just wanted to say, this is our first podcast, and we've been doing all of this volunteer, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that's helping us work it out. Everybody that's on the news team, and especially producer Enoch. Thanks for all the help. All the graphics are done by Davey Jones, and he's really
special shout out to Davey Jones from here. Davey, you frickin' rock, man. You rock.
That being said, unless we have any other thank yous to the community.
Thank you to the Twitch mods, of course.
Absolutely. Checking in with the chat. Let's see what they say over here on the Discord. Looks like we're ready to go, I think. So in Acapulco, they've decided that they want to take an interesting path to protesting crime in their nation. Just a heads up, trigger warning for those of you that have irrational fear of clowns.
Oh, God.
Pues queremos la paz, como hay mucha violencia de este lado, pues usted sabe cómo anda la situación ahorita, pues queremos que haya un poquito de paz y pues como transmitimos la alegría, la risa, la sonrisa, pues porque por eso somos payasos.
Clowns in Mexico.
Nosotros no queremos
Just
ninguna
everywhere.
violencia. Por eso, y ahora hay gente que han ocupado nuestros trajes, nuestro maquillaje para asesinar a un narco, ¿verdad? Entonces, no, nosotros no somos eso.
Gotta admit, that's really good makeup.
Right? Some of these are really awesome.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
You guys got me fucking rolling over here.
Oh.
So, just in case you thought that, this was just limited to Mexico, a while back we had our own clown protest in Washington, D.C. Go ahead and let the viewers know what the word juggalo means.
How do we define juggalo?
Just roll clip number 25.
Oh God, the drums.
The district will be hosting a number of protests on and around the National Mall this weekend.
We started off this morning, loaded the van up, headed up here,
The Juggalos are marching on Washington, D.C. The FBI has decided that we're a gang. We're exercising our First Amendment, that we have the right to gather and we have the right to listen to whatever kind of music we want without being labeled a gang.
It's our mark on history.
It's our mark on history. It's showing the world who we are. We've been hiding under the streets for way too long, and we're about to come up top and show everybody who we are.
We're at a DC cafe right now, and we are watching Juggalos interact with DC folks, people that are here all the time.
Yeah. It's almost like they're real people.
It's working out.
So I'm all the way from Utah up here doing this, so.
Welcome. We're happy to have you all.
We got people from Colorado, California, Illinois, everywhere.
Do you really think
Working
this
out.
guy in fucking face paint, in clown paint, is intimidating? Do you really think my black ass is that intimidating?
I grew up like this, and a goth kid in middle school, surrounded by rednecks. That's my upbringing, but it helped me stick out, but it helped me find myself.
They're staying at my house, he's at my house, she's at my house, she's at my house. I've got 15 people there right now. I've driven countless people to and from the airport to their hotels. We're not gangbanging freaks, we're just people, but we're a family.
Then from 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, that's the Juggalos March. That'll kick off down at the Lincoln Memorial.
Over here at the Lincoln Memorial, you're going to see tourists and school groups and families taking pictures, and over here, you're going to see where the Juggalos have started to assemble. And everybody over here isn't quite sure what to make of what's happening over here.
So the thing about following Insane Clown Posse is you go to lots of weird shit towns. So it's very weird to be not only in a city, but in one of the most important cities in the world, in a place that is sacred to American democracy.
That's why you're here right now. You're in the crowd to be proud. You're the ones demanding no discrimination.
We stood here and watched for hours and listened to the speakers along with the fans of the band, and we didn't see any trouble at all.
This is our day on our year. Are you ready?
Okay, the march has started. They're going to go down the reflecting pool, they're going to go around the monument, and then come back. There's a lot of media here.
There is no such thing as an ordinary Insane Clown Posse show. It's always a spectacle. It's always an event. There's always something wrapped up in it. This is about freedom. It's about freedom from persecution, freedom from profiling, freedom to be who you want to be and to not be unduly hassled because of that.
The government gets away with this, commits such a blatant act of discrimination against us Juggalos, then what the fuck happens to us next? What happens to everybody next? You never know.
I never thought I would be agreeing with the Juggalos.
I know. It's such a good clip. It's such a good clip,
right?
Oh my
the craziest shit is that they're far more sane as the libtards. It's just whatever.
The Juggalos are calling for
So
everything
good.
that oh goodness.
Puts a whole new meaning to silent majority.
Fucking magnets, how do they work?
That being said, that's pretty much the end of our show. You guys that have stuck around, go ahead and drop your suggestions for the show title in the chat channels wherever you are. We can see them all. We'll be able to check them. Just make sure that you make it kind of short so it can fit on the thumbnail. That being said, stick around for those of you that are listening to the edited podcast, because right after this, we'll have the drop. But the main show is over, and if that's all you're here for, we'll see you next week.
Y'all have a good one.
All right, I think I got the channel permission set up correctly. All right, let's take a look at our show notes. And I should probably get a tweet out. Have you guys sent out your tweets about the show yet? right, let me send out a tweet about the show, and then we can start rolling clips here pretty soon. What was your favorite news of the week, by the way? What was like your favorite story that happened this week?
For me?
Yeah. Something weird, something that wasn't like mainstream, like just a oddity that like you heard about that like, I don't know.
Well, the guy at work who's a little bit slow was talking about Stormy Daniels all week.
I feel like everybody's talking about Stormy Daniels. They can't get enough of her.
If we're talking about that kind of news, shoot, man. Today I was in the break room and these ladies were talking, complaining about Trump and complaining about how their uncle that's been here illegally 30 years and should be allowed to stay finally went back to Mexico.
All right, and we are transitioning to chat.
All right.
We're live, guys. Well, we have been live for a while.
Yeah, for a little while now. Let me... Gotta tag. Let me get the links into this tweet, and then we can get ourselves on the road. This is how we figure out on our server how the Twitter trends, or rather what they're doing.
What do you mean, dead air? We're here.
I'm pulling Make a Film Pathetic, and I'm going to grab that and throw it on the tweet. Let's go ahead and roll the first clip that we've got. I think this is a great one to start the drop with because it follows up from that Schneiderman story that's been going all week, and it's kind of a look back into the past as like what actually happened with this man before Trump was president. And it kind of gives us a little bit more context for the scandal that's going on right now. So you should have clip number 26.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and play that one for the audience, and then I'll go ahead and mute my audio.
Trump's Family Foundation is under investigation this morning. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman announced that his office is looking to see if the Donald J. Trump Foundation violated state law. The Washington Post reported that Trump made questionable purchases using donations from other contributors. Now, the Trump campaign accuses Schneiderman, a Hillary Clinton supporter, of being, in its words, a partisan hack.
New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is with us. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Mr. Partisan Hack, how do you respond to that comment about yourself?
I sued Donald Trump for his fraudulent university in August of 2013.
Before he was running for office.
If I had come on your show and said he's going to be the Republican nominee for president in 2016, you never would have invited me back. My credibility would have been so damaged. This is not political. I regulate the nonprofits in New York State. I have a charities bureau. We look at every nonprofit that does business in New York State to see if they're following the rules.
What are you looking for in this inquiry?
And we started, and again, we started communications with them back in June. We didn't have a press conference, didn't have a press release. We didn't try and grandstand on this because there were allegations that they'd made contributions to political committees, which is illegal. There have been allegations that they made contributions to charities that now say they've never received the money. So as with any of the other thousands of nonprofits we regulate, we have been making inquiries and having, I have to say, had very professional correspondence with Trump's lawyers or Trump Foundation's lawyers about these problems.
But as a Clinton supporter, can't you appreciate, as a member of the New York Leadership Council of Hillary Clinton's, the optics here, that this could appear politically motivated?
Yeah, if I'm a traffic cop, but I'm a Democrat, and he speeds by me, I have to give him a ticket. It's that simple.
Go ahead and stop that. Did you see how he looked, though? What did we just find out about his alcoholism and everything? And he just looks like he's completely sauced that entire interview.
Well, I mean, you have to be.
That eyeliner's for real, though. Let's see here. Right after that happened, though, they had another interview with another neighboring attorney general that kind of like shed some additional light on his situation.
Trump Foundation is facing new scrutiny. The New York's Attorney General is investigating the organization to make sure to look into if the Trump Foundation was complying with the laws governing charities in the state of New York.
The Washington Post reports that Trump spent money from his charity on himself and made contributions by others appear to have come from him.
Well, I think from my colleague,
Man, those are a lot of consonants.
Attorney General Schneiderman, this is a very weak statement that he has put out that he might investigate, that he might look into the Trump Foundation. This is, unfortunately, this is a big supporter of Secretary Hillary Clinton doing a hack job for her. And it's unfortunate for the profession of the attorneys general around the country that General Schneiderman has chose to do so, but I can assure you that the Trump Foundation is fine, that this issue has been laid to rest, and it's just unfortunate that my colleague in New York it's taken it to this level and putting out a weak statement about a Trump Foundation which has done so much good across the country over the years.
One of the reports is that charity money, they spent charity money on a 6-foot tall
painting of him.
Painting of Donald Trump. You okay with that?
Well, as someone who's only 5'2", I'm a little astounded at a 6-foot tall painting. That would be pretty large for any living room that I own. And so I don't know what exactly the Trump Foundation, the specifics of what they spent money on, but I know that they have done so much good over the years.
There's a sidestep.
This is another political hack job by a Democratic insider and supporter of Hillary Clinton.
Should a charity spend money on a painting? Just yes or no.
Who the fuck cares about the painting?
Well, I don't know what the charity's motives were for doing that, and so I think that would be a question for the foundation, not for me as the Attorney General of Arkansas.
The charity's motivation for a painting? For a painting of Donald Trump, am I right?
It cracks me up. I love how they don't want to address the problem after she's immediately pointed it out, and they're like, "Oh, but what about Donald Trump? What about this thing that looks slightly incriminating?"
Oh, he made a portrait of himself. It's 6 feet tall. That seems crazy. How? I mean, no, 6 feet tall for a portrait. If I had the kind of money to be able to do that, to get a portrait of myself, sure, why not? But they're just taking these tiny little things and just making them a freaking big deal, you know?
So, on another note, there was actually a little bit of news about the migrant crisis this week. It's not directly related. It's more more Soros related than anything else. Go ahead and play number 28.
George Soros has funded an app to help illegal immigrants avoid federal immigration authorities. The group is called United We Dream, founded by an organization receiving more than $200,000 as well in federal grant money.
$200,000 in federal grant money. I'm pausing that right there just to say that.
Your taxpayer dollars at work. Joining us now, Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations Research for Judicial Watch, which brought the story to light. That's outrageous. Soros getting involved, federal money being used for it. What's happening as a result? Is there somebody being prosecuted?
It's also a crime. 8 U.S.C. Section 1327, which is aiding and abetting the unlawful entry of persons into the United States. This app is pretty outrageous. Not only does it allow the unlawful illegal alien to have all the magic language they need to plead their case, but it provides notice to their friends and family.
Language.
It alerts their attorney. It's a full service.
I was actually really surprised with how well they presented
somebody being
this.
prosecuted?
Well, it's a good question. Why are they getting another dime of your taxpayer money?
So the Trump Justice Department is acting a lot like the Obama Justice Department. They're monitoring. They're not actually doing much. We also know that illegal immigration in the last month has gone up. It's almost tripled on the southern border.
And when the Justice Department chooses to, they do go after people on the internet who are engaged in all sorts of illegal activity, whether it's Silk Road or any other for people purveyors of internet stuff, whether it's pornography or anything else. When they want to go after
people of internet stuff, such as channers,
they do. And here's a prime example of somebody abusing the system and taking
Who is
dollars.
the hacker Fortune?
Why?
Yeah, well, I guess the reason is they can't get a conviction. They've lost. I mean, to find out that the FBI's conviction rate has dropped by 11% in 5 years, why in the world would the president not fire James Comey? He should have been fired.
Yeah, well,
meanwhile,
the Mueller-Comey legacy has been the slow-motion destruction of the FBI, and I've advocated that the whole operation be shut down and be moved over to the Marshal Service.
Hey, boss, bump up the volume.
By the way, we're headed in a direction where I don't know that the FBI can be saved. I'm starting to think that you may have the only solution that's been proffered that would, in fact, be a real solution and get rid of these folks. But even now, we know who the criminals are. They're sitting there. Most of them have been demoted. They've been fired. They've been reassigned. They should be in jail, for crying out loud.
And look, Mueller has yet to articulate the criminal predicate for his investigation. No one can tell you what crime's been committed. I can tell you what crime has been committed with respect to some of the actions and activities of people in Mueller's staff, at the FBI. It's 18 U.S.C. Section 242, which is deprivation of rights under color of law. That is an abuse of power statute. And when you look at the activities of Strzok and Page and McCabe, I mean, the whole litany of names, they've abused their offices.
The American people rightly have a small amount of patience with a government that doesn't respond, doesn't react, and carry out consequences. You know that everyone watching this broadcast tonight who is in the middle class, who is working, who has a family, if they pulled half of the nonsense that any one of these people,
right now,
they would be prosecuted with zeal.
Absolutely.
And this is hollowing out this country. We can tell in the pits of our stomach that we as a nation right now, our founding values, I mean, we've had our throats cut, and we have got to do something about it.
The double standard and the disparity of treatment, not just at the political level, where there's this outrageous assault on the president and his associates, but the selective prosecution of people with respect to things like security clearances and mishandling of classified information. They see it, they know it.
So let's talk about solutions here tonight. Why not have the president's legal team? You know, it's terrific. You know, you've got Rudy Giuliani, you couldn't have a better public advocate.
Yep.
But I'll tell you, there's something wrong when you're not attacking the special counsel and that corrupt staff of left-wing ideologues and activists that he's assembled and calls it a special counsel team. Why not go after them?
Yeah, I mean, arguably criminal complaints could be filed seeking remedies because of the outrageous abuse, this abuse of authority and conduct, the abuse of office. You know, this deal about
fight the liberal Avengers.
We just today we heard about the pen register being run on his phone and his communications at the White House. All this stuff is an abuse of office and should all be pursued.
I still can't get over Paul Manafort's wife being frisked and at gunpoint as agents.
A pre-dawn raid.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the stuff that
pre-dawn raid on Paul Manafort.
Narco terrorists, are involved in. Look, there are any number of remedies, whether it's administrative. For example, the president could and should fire every single political appointee who's an Obama holdover. They should not be in office.
Yep.
That's number one. Clean house that way.
Chris,
there are other remedies.
We got 10 seconds and appreciate you giving us that one. Chris Farrell, Judicial Watch, as always. Thanks.
I mean, holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
It was a pretty good interview, yeah?
Yeah. That was good.
You know, I never really thought much of Lou Dobbs before, but I watched that one, and now I'm going to have to... He's on my short list. All right. So, you know, not all of the human trafficking stuff is all bad news. There's actually a few decent stories. And one of the ones we found this week was this story about a Malaysian police intercept of a shipping vessel that had 131 people on board. That should be clip number 29.
All right. We're moving right on to it.
The vessel was stopped in Johor State on Saturday. Police say the tanker was carrying 131 Sri Lankans, 98 men, 24 women, and 9 children. Police also raided a fishing boat used to transport the people to the tanker and detained 3 Indonesians and 4 Malaysians on board. Another 5 Malaysians were arrested for suspected involvement in the smuggling syndicate with connections across Sri Lanka, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, and Malaysia.
And, okay, so, cool, they rescued all those people and everything. And yet we have George Soros over here using our money to build an app to allow illegal immigrants to come into this country. And do what?
You know, perpetuate the vicious cycle, make money and cheap labor. That's my best guess. I honestly perpetuate human suffering. be the worst people in the world, try to get that high achievement score of most deaths and turmoil caused? Not really sure. Moving right along, we didn't really have a big story about any of the Mueller updates. There's some stuff going on there, but I felt like this was one of the more important videos. And there's some other interesting facts about the Trump Russia story, in the main show, but this kind of fell between the cracks for a few people. Go ahead and play. Should be number 32.
Coming right up.
We say this a lot, but documents obtained by Judicial Watch may confirm collusion between Mueller and Comey. In the emails, FBI officials advised former Director James Comey to consult with Special Counsel Mueller before Comey testified to Congress. What? Well, that substantiates news reports that Comey met with Mueller prior to his testimony before the Senate Intel Committee in June of last year. Joining us now with more on this is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. We're also joined by Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg, along with Harmeet Dillon, the RNC committeewoman from California, a practicing attorney, civil rights attorney as well. Great to see all of you. Tom, boy, it's tough to get documents out of this Justice Department. And you guys had to file how many suits to get this nugget about Comey and Mueller?
2 federal lawsuits, Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. We began asking for the documents in August of last year, and we just got 15 or so pages in the last week or so. And they show, as you say, James Comey was fired by the president, and within a day or so, he's communicating with the FBI about upcoming testimony because all of Congress wanted him to testify. And you see the emails, Dear Jim, hi Jim, can we coordinate? What information do you need me to have in terms of institutional prerogatives?
Can we? We have a couple of the full screens of the emails up there. And yeah, Director, in response to your email below, we've consulted with executive management here, including the General Counsel, and recommend the following. That your counsel, there's a mistake, there's typos in here, but consult with the Special Counsel Mueller to determine the timing of any such testimony. So the timing should be worked out with Mueller, too.
That's right.
Is there any benign explanation for this?
Well, typically there would be some coordination. But what Comey said was beyond the pale in terms of what government officials are typically allowed to say in such situations. Certainly if you're an FBI director and you're having meetings with the President of the United States, typically the agencies tell you you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to talk about documents you created at the FBI about those conversations.
You're not allowed
Comey
to talk about your job.
Full, free reign during his testimony, and it was blessed both by the FBI, it looks like, and by Mr. Mueller.
Saul, this is curious, but there are also, as they refer to in this email, there are, I guess they say, institutional privileges or prerogatives that may be presented by any such testimony. So the FBI, Special Counsel's Office, messaging Comey about, we just want to basically coordinate about the concerns, I guess, I don't know, the institutional privileges, things that Comey wouldn't have to reveal, presumably, on Capitol Hill. Do you see any problems with this, the appearance of coordination?
I don't see any problem for Mueller. To me, this isn't really new news. I think Comey at the time announced that he was going to consult with Mueller. It's very clear that Comey has had a man crush on Mueller for quite some time and wants to wrap himself in Mueller's glory. But I haven't actually read these latest emails that Tom got. But I don't think there's anything wrong with.
Hey, boss, can you bump up that volume just a little bit more? YouTube's calling for it.
Do you have any problem with what I'm going to say or how I'm going to say it? And do we know that Mueller blessed anything, or is that just somebody's surmise? So again, nothing surprises me about Jim Comey. I don't think it should be used to smear Mueller.
Here's another big story, and Harmeet, I want to get into this. So Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy went up to the Justice Department today, and they were allowed to review certain classified documents. And they said this afterward. We had a productive discussion today with officials at the Office of Director of National Intelligence, Department of Justice, FBI, and we raised questions related to the information requested from the intel community. The officials committed to holding further discussions of these matters. We look forward to continuing dialogue. Blah, blah, blah. This follows Nunes, again, threatening contempt of Congress against Jeff Sessions. Seems like you have to threaten contempt of Congress to get anywhere. And what is this? Where's this going?
No, I mean this is a spectacle. It does very bad for the reputation of the Department of Justice and the FBI here, where it takes threats, repeated threats. It's like it's like those movies where the villains are chasing the train and they're throwing stuff off the back to try to delay them. It's like that. But eventually they're going to have to pay the piper and come forward with this information. They're doing it very slowly. There's clearly something they have to hide, because if they didn't have something to hide, what's really ironic here is that the Department of Justice is not in the Constitution. It's an inferior branch of government that was created by Congress. And so for them to arrogantly say that they're somehow above the Congress and they don't have to answer requests like the rest of the government is truly outrageous. So the president wants them to cooperate, clearly. Now, they put out the story at the DOJ that the White House is on board with what they're doing, but then the White House put out a statement saying, no, actually, we want you to cooperate, just don't give stuff that's extra top secret. What we've seen from their redactions in the past that have been grudgingly unveiled is that they were nothing burgers. They were simply there to protect the DOJ from embarrassment.
Yeah, well, they were exculpatory.
Exactly.
They were exculpatory, not for the DOJ. And
right, for Flynn and for other people. So they're protecting very hard to hide something.
But there's always a tug of war between Congress and the executive branch. That has always existed.
Not to
going
this
back
degree,
to,
though.
But this does take it to a new level. And Kim Strassel has an interesting analysis. I want you all to weigh in on this. Tonight in the Wall Street Journal, she writes. It's about the FBI source. She says, we know Mr. Nunes's request deals with a top secret intel source of the FBI and CIA who is a U.S. citizen and who was involved in the Russia collusion probe. We might take this to mean that the FBI secretly had a person on the payroll who used his or her non-FBI credentials to interact in some capacity with the Trump campaign. Strassel seems to be... she has incredible sources, I know that.
You're not the other one that hates the word nothing burger.
Indicating that there could have been someone inside the Trump campaign from the FBI who is embedded in there, I guess, spying on the Trump campaign. Now, we'll see if any of this pans out, but Tom.
Well, we had confirmation this last week from the House Intelligence Committee that there was a counterintelligence operation against Flynn while he was on the campaign or working for the transition.
Yeah, and how does that play out? Just wiretaps or just what?
Yeah, what was it? What did the program entail?
Like they already wiretapped Trump Tower?
The approach of the modified limited hangout in terms of information releases. For 4 months, the Mueller operation sat on the fact that they had the Lisa Page struck messages. And on top of that, then we found out about the Clinton DNC dossier. There's going to be a fourth or third or fifth shoe to drop.
Other shoes will drop.
And this... I don't
How many legs do these people have to have so many shoes?
Here. There's embarrassing information at issue.
Saul. The Strassel point, we'll see what comes of this, but it's interesting. If, Saul, I know you love ifs as a white collar litigator. You love my hypotheticals. Let's go back to law school. If the FBI embedded someone inside the Trump campaign, and they believe it for a legitimate purpose, if Russia was really trying to throw the election, if they had information indicating that, they put someone inside the Trump campaign, burrowed away, working in one of those little cubicles with his ear out or her ear
Obama
out.
If
what's
video
the problem
here.
there, if there's a problem there?
Oh, there's a big problem unless you have the same kind of problem you have when you search a lawyer's office. You better have something really, really good to be able to justify that. And here's the problem. There's an old saying, and before I go any further, let's give credit to John Ehrlichman, the author of Modified Limited Hangout. I wouldn't want to leave him twisting slowly in the wind, Laura.
Oh,
but,
excellent.
Keep in mind, there's an old saying, the wages of crying wolf. And Harmeet put her finger on it. We've now seen too many instances where the Department of Justice and or the FBI has said, we have to redact this because it could endanger national security and it's classified. And we have seen now, time after time, where it's been unredacted and it's just been embarrassing. And the latest and when you do that 2 or 3 times, people are going to stop believing you. You lose all credibility. And we saw that last weekend when they finally unredacted 2 passages in the House Intelligence Committee Majority Report, the Select Committee Report. And they revealed 2 incredible things. One, that the FBI didn't think Mike Flynn had lied. We had heard about that.
Huge
but secondly,
revelation.
Shockingly, that people haven't focused on enough, that the underlying crime Mike Flynn was being investigated for was the Logan Act. an act that's been a dead letter for over 200 years.
Right.
It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, that John Kerry never violates. So, yeah, of course. Yeah, so we got
but
two
it's
pieces
really,
of
it's really shocking. It's really shocking that Sally Yates would approve and greenlight an investigation of anybody for violating the Logan Act.
Now,
No one
Sally
has
Yates, come
ever
on,
been
let's talk
prosecuted.
turkey here. I mean, we're way over here, but Sally Yates, I mean, that little hissy fit of a resignation letter. Oh, come on! She marches herself or the agents over to interview Flynn. That whole thing smells like a big fat setup to me. Yates marching. Why do you have any business going to interview Mike Flynn? Mike Flynn didn't even have a lawyer with him. He's like, sure, I'll talk to you. He didn't think he had any. Of course, they didn't give him notice. Mike Flynn should have never talked to them, but he didn't think anything of it, Saul. He was like, well, you know, whatever. You guys were way over. I want to do an hour with you. I need to have a 5-hour show. I love my guests. Thank you, guys.
Well then, Party Rock, are you there?
Yeah, so what you got next there for us, brother?
Looks like next, what we're moving on up into. If we're moving up from 33, we're moving up to 34. We're moving into the Hawaii eruption. Creeping lava, toxic gas. Why Hawaii volcano is a unique disaster, basically. And let's go ahead and roll the clip.
As part of a new policy against hateful content and conduct, R. Kelly will be the first artist to have music removed from Spotify-owned playlists. R. Kelly's music will still be available on the platform, but the company will no longer actively promote it, according to a company spokesperson. And while the artist may not have violated the hate content rules, the company says egregious bad behavior can impact the decision too. Spotify told Time, "We don't censor content because of an artist or creator's behavior, but we want our editorial decisions, what we choose to program, to reflect our values."
What's astonished me about Donald Trump is how effectively he's managed to take his opponent's strengths and turn them against them. It's a type of political jiu-jitsu that we saw back in, 2004 when John Kerry was being swift-boated.
John Kerry is no war hero.
I know John Kerry is lying about his first Purple Heart.
It was shocking at the time. And what we're seeing now is that on steroids.
John McCain, he's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
The world has turned upside down if Donald Trump is accusing people like this of not having integrity, whether it's Jim Comey.
He's a showboat, he's a grandstander.
Or Rod Rosenstein.
These people have the biggest conflicts of interest I've ever seen.
Or Robert Mueller, who have spent their lives working to uphold the rule of law. He doesn't care. It's not to say that James Comey is a saint or that Rod Rosenstein has never made a mistake in his life. It's to say that I don't think anyone can dispute that these men are people who have devoted their lives and their careers to upholding the law. And they are being attacked on those grounds by the least law-abiding president we've ever had.
Should Donald Trump be impeached?
I hope not. Because I think impeaching and removing Donald Trump from office would let the American people off the hook.
There's just no way, short of Donald Trump eating live babies in the Oval Office,
sorry.
There is no way he's going to be impeached. There aren't the votes in Congress. But the American people are going to have to deal with this problem by showing up at the polls, by expressing their values, and by voting in people who will uphold those values.
I believe
What's
that's
astonished
a
me about
message that we can all agree with.
This is hilarious.
His reasoning is the funniest thing. Okay, pause that. So that looks, I think we played number 35 there. That's the New York Times failing to grasp with the Trump phenomenon. It's like one of the best clips in the entire damn thing. I love it. Looks like we skipped 2. Do you have the clip number 33?
Yes, I do. Let us load it up.
Let's play that one. It's a little bit weird. This one talks about R. Kelly is getting sort of censored by Spotify, and I'm not saying that R. Kelly is any angel.
We already went over that one.
Oh, did we?
Well, we already viewed it.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Yeah, but whatever you have to say about it, I'm all ears.
Oh, I was just gonna say he's no angel, but that is hampering our freedom of speech. And then on top of that, he's not the only rapper that's happening to.
Did Spotify even give another reason for removing R. Kelly
Just
from
that they don't like him.
That's it? I mean, you could remove somebody... Really, Spotify?
Guess so.
Really, Spotify?
I mean, I mean, YouTube's doing it. Twitch is doing it, and so are a lot of other services.
So Spotify will let some local black metal band publish their music on their platform and get like 3-4 views or whatever, and not worry about that. But when it comes to an artist as big as R. Kelly, as soon as they show their political opinion, they just push it and just drop it off just like that.
Pretty much.
This is starting to get ridiculous.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, remember, people kept saying the left would eat their own, and it looks like they are currently eating their own.
But it's not even their own anymore. It's everybody. It's if you don't agree with their politics, if you don't agree with whatever they say, if you don't absolutely hate Donald Trump, then you are bad. You're a bad person. You're terrible. You've got something wrong with you, and it's just. How? Why? How is it that we've gotten to this point after everything that has led us up to now? Why are we still talking about it like that? Why is it still a thing of you're getting dropped by people if you even express just the most minute approval of the job that Trump is doing?
The only thing I can assume is that it must feel good to kick a dead horse. That being said, I think it's time that we thought about locking in for the main show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we cover the Stormy Daniels?
That actually we did not, but
Let's cover the Stormy Daniels, because this is really interesting. You guys have heard about the Nixon sex cult, and we'll give you a little bit of background for them, and then we'll talk about how everyone on social media is talking about how Stormy Daniels might have a connection there. We'll start with clip number 30, so we can give you a little bit of background about them.
All right, let's cut to that. Coming right up.
Sex trafficking in the United States is happening. Police say even...
Okay, I just want to pause right there to say, like, that's the most amazing way to start a clip. Sex trafficking in America.
In upstate New York.
Right? Strong.
We first brought you the story a couple of months ago when former Dynasty star Catherine Oxenberg came on to say that she believed her daughter India had been swept into this group NXIVM, which was making news. Well, shortly thereafter, NXIVM's founder and leader, Keith Raniere, was arrested, along with one of his top followers, an actress, a well-known actress from the show Smallville, named Allison Mack. The pair now charged with federal counts of sex trafficking and related crimes. They both denied the charges, but Mack was released on $5 million bail just yesterday. Prosecutors say this woman, Allison Mack, recruited women to join an alleged female mentorship group led by Raniere. They say that, in fact, the actress was actually recruiting sex slaves for this man. Actress Samia Shoaib says that she was targeted by Mack in 2013, who wanted her to join this group. She's here. I'll talk with her in a moment. But first, some background on this group. Watch.
Do you have anything to say about the charges made against you, ma'am?
Smallville actress Allison Mack under intense scrutiny for her role as the main recruiter in an alleged sex trafficking group. The leader of the group is this man, Keith Raniere, featured here with Mack in a series of so-called enlightenment videos posted on YouTube.
The way they buy it is they find it congruent and authentic.
The recruitment attempts go back several years, with Mack also reaching out to A-list celebrities like Emma Watson, tweeting, "I'm a fellow actress like yourself and involved in an amazing women's movement I think you'd dig. I'd love to chat if you're open." Mack also tweeted at singer Kelly Clarkson, writing, "I heard through the grapevine that you're a fan of Smallville. I'm a fan of yours as well. I'd love to chat sometime." Another actress was Samia Shoaib, with roles in prominent films like The Sixth Sense.
Plainer. You want a plain ring to go with your plain fiancé, is that how it is?
Hi.
Ah, science. The pursuit of knowledge.
And the hit TV show Sex and the City.
Roosters.
Excuse me?
They are roosters. Roosters crow.
In 2013, she met Mack. The two were auditioning for a pilot in New York. And within days, Shoaib says what started out as friendly banter turned into a recruiting effort. Dozens of emails were exchanged, encouraging Shoaib to join a women's group and connect with a friend of Mack's, who ran what she called a school for introspection, adding, I know it may not be your thing. I just feel like you will love this. NBC News reached out to Emma Watson and Kelly Clarkson, but did not hear back. Allison Mack, through a spokesperson, said, I have no comment regarding these matters. Additionally, there's no statement being issued at this time. Samia Shoaib joins me now. Samia, great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a successful actress. She's a successful actress. You met at an audition, and I know you say she, quote, love bombed you. What does that mean?
It was basically a process of mirroring me. So I would say, I'm very interested in feminism. She'd say, me too. I'm from Pakistan. Oh, I'm fascinated by different cultures. Tell me more. I like sushi. I love sushi. You know, it was we got close very quickly. And looking back, it was, a very contrived effort. But at the time, it's...
Okay, so I'm pausing it right there. Is Allison Mack dead to where they have to bring on Samia Shoaib to talk about her? They can't just bring...
No, Allison Mack won't
herself
talk.
on Kelly Day?
She won't come on stage. She just, is avoiding every journalist. And on top of that, this was the only person they could get to come on and actually talk about her experience. And she's pretty open about it, which is kind of cool. No one else has really talked about their methods before, and it's kind of neat that she was able to get on Megyn Kelly and say it in open like that. I mean, that's pretty heavy for MSM.
Gotta agree with you there. Let's get back to it.
She seemed so sincere.
Did she ever make any reference directly or indirectly to this group, NXIVM?
She said she lived upstate in a communal situation. She didn't really say anything else about it.
And did she offer to help you? Because this is how a lot of these groups sort of get you in, is like, hey, we have a great new way of thinking. Why don't you come listen to it?
Well, I was in a fairly vulnerable time. I'd had a traumatic experience and I was drinking too much. And I was looking for help with that.
I can relate to that.
We discussed how AA was full of, for me, it was a lot of male energy and I didn't really respond to group situations. So she said, I have an alternative. And she put me on the phone with a guy called Edgar, who, spouted some very generic self-help stuff, and I wasn't really impressed.
You ultimately had a dinner with her where she brought another person along.
Yes.
And there's been some speculation in the press about whether that was India Oxenberg. Do you believe she brought India with you that day, with her?
Well, I barely remember this woman because she was very quiet and she seemed to be in awe of Allison and somewhat under her control. She didn't speak at all. But visually, when I saw a picture of India, it may well be her. But at that dinner, Allison was transformed into a different person. She was very dour, very moody, very pulled down and serious.
As if something happened to her.
So it was strange to see her go from a smiling, chirpy, extremely friendly girl to someone quite stern.
Do you believe that she was trying to recruit you into this group?
I mean, to be honest, I have no doubt. Looking back at the emails, it's very clear that she was really pumping up her feminist interests to lure me in. And, I'm very supportive of young feminists. I was very heartened that this woman was looking to do something positive. So it was exactly the right button to push with me. And I'm sort of angry that she used feminism for such nefarious ends.
She's denying it, but she is under arrest, and $5 million bail does not suggest the police don't think you really did anything wrong. Listen, we're glad you are well, and we're strong and projected enough that eventually she moved on, because this could have ended differently.
Yes.
All the best to you.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll be right back.
Well then, Allison Mack.
Yeah, she's a dangerous one, huh? Never thought that about her in
an
Smallville.
actress from...
I love Bubbles. He's the best. All right, so let's see here. What's the next clip? So the next clip is number 31. This is a small, lesser-known YouTuber named Wild Smile. I've been following him for a while, and he seems to have pretty decent source content. He seems to have a decent grasp of the idea of this Twitter debacle that Stormy is involved in. And while we're not really fans of the whole Stormy news story. This one made the drop because it was especially ridiculous and silly, but possibly having disastrous implications for Stormy and the whole impeachment effort on Trump. Go ahead and roll, what is this, number 31?
31 rolling out. And so everybody claps for the person that Donald Trump fucked. Is that right?
I wonder if I got clipped a little bit wrong. This one might be...
Or
Did it just
who
start
can
in that
forget
position?
how
Yeah,
desperate
just
CNN was to get an interview with
Here we
her
are.
back in March.
Okay.
They actually went to her work.
Is it back up?
If you catch my
Yes.
drift.
Sort of been a
There we
double-edged
go.
sword.
Yep, there we are.
Where a lot of people are very interested in booking me for dancing and stuff like that. So I'm getting more dance bookings. I usually only dance once a month, and now I'm dancing 3 or 4 times a month. So that's been really great.
This is
3 or 4 times a month.
My life
She's
is
dancing
so
now.
bad right now.
So great.
I get so much
good.
money, and there's all these penises around.
why many others and myself can't stand the mainstream media. The groupthink, for one, but also they aren't funny, insightful, clever, entertaining, trustworthy, innovative, or impressive in any way. They are all handed out the same scripts written by the same people who make the same points.
Hey, pay attention.
This person, Stormy Daniels, was paid $130,000 to remain quiet about her time with Donald Trump, money that she now apparently doesn't intend to pay back now that she's ran to every news station that will listen to her. And hey, maybe she does plan on paying it back, now that she actually has the money to do so. The same people, though, that were defending this woman, a literal call girl willing to go back on a deal for the sake of publicity, were the same ones saying unspeakable things about Juanita Broaddrick, who did not willingly give herself to Bill Clinton, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. If you expected these people to hold their standards across all sides, you would be mistaken. Now, Stormy's lawyer is adding to the Russia-Trump conspiracy theory by claiming that Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, received money from a Russian oligarch. You can only hear people cry wolf so many times before you just stop believing their lies. This is yet another chapter in a campaign to bring about discord and division to the United States. Remember when it was the supposed election interference that created the discord? Well, this Russia hysteria that these exact people created is now creating the discord that they claimed was a result of the Russian meddling.
The Russians said to the Trump people, "We can help you. Donald Trump Jr., love it, bring it on." The Russians did it with Wikipedia, and Trump therefore used it 100 times on the campaign trail, encouraging the Russians to steal from Hillary Clinton, okay?
Richard Goodstein claims that Wikipedia hacked our election. Just think to yourself, how many times has the story shifted in these last 2 years? Remember when it was Guccifer 2.0 that was the key to all this, until people found in the metadata that the Guccifer data must have been obtained locally, as the transfer rate of the data was more consistent with a USB connection rather than a wireless internet connection. Yet this revelation was not aired on CNN, MSNBC,
That's our Seth Rich
ABC.
connection right there.
And once their claim was disproven, they jumped to another claim, trying to make us forget that they just spent several months on a bogus story. This brings me to the point I wanted to make in this video. Yesterday, internet sleuths on the image boards noticed an interesting marking on Stormy Daniels' hip. When asked about it on Twitter, Stormy immediately responded, saying that the pictures were photoshopped, and then later saying that it was a surgical scar.
Now, hang on a second. They're talking about this alleged surgical scar, but it really looks like a branding covered up by a tattoo. Who was it that brought that up?
That's correct.
Who was it that brought that up before on Twitter and then deleted their reply?
Actually, we have that archived. You can go ahead and bring up the Twitter feed. Can you switch over to your browser?
Not at the moment. That was Roseanne,
well,
wasn't
let's
it?
finish out. We can finish this video out, and then we can show the actual Twitter feed, because I've got an archive link in our show notes, and we can show where this whole story kind of originated from. Apparently, it came from one of the image boards online. I think it was 8chan where it came from originally. But the whole thing made its way onto Twitter, and that's kind of where it got explosive.
Oh boy. Jumping back in.
Well, which is it? Of course, even asking questions about this is taboo. What could this mark mean? And why was she so quick to respond? And why did she seem so sensitive about it? You would think if somebody made an outrageous claim, you would just laugh at it, find it funny, rather than finding yourself immediately filling up with rage, calling those that point this out crazy with clear moral indignation. What could this brand mean? Was it photoshopped? Perhaps it was actually a scar from having her tubes tied. The reason people found it particularly strange was that it was similar, although not the same, brand that Allison Mack had, the actress from Smallville who was in the news for a millisecond following this article that came out, which was then quickly buried as soon as Bill Cosby was found guilty. Ironic that people virtue signaled in celebration about Cosby's conviction. A quick reminder that no physical evidence was used to convict him, by the way. Enjoy that in 10 years. But people kept quiet about Allison Mack's little club.
No physical
You have to admit,
evidence.
those brands do make you wonder. So, is Stormy Daniels under the thumb of elites? Judging from her actions, I think it's likely that somebody is pulling her strings. But is she part of a cult? That seems outlandish. Seems like a bit of a stretch. Here's a tweet of hers from February 18th, 2010. Quote, "I think I'm about to be initiated into a gang. Or maybe it's a cult. Lol." Lol indeed, Stormy. We are in a bit of a
Famous last words?
catch-22. If any of this is true, no one's going to speak of it or bring it up on the mainstream media. Why would they, if they stand to lose so much? If this is fake, it's only going to be refuted by those who are no longer trusted by the general public. In this case, you will have to decide for yourself what is going on. Personally, I don't think that the mark looks close to a surgical scar, as it wouldn't have such a weird shape to it. On top of that, how outraged and vague Stormy was when bringing this up sent off red flags to me. I don't think it's impossible for things like this to happen behind the scenes. If the mark is real, then she is owned or deeply in debt to those who are using her as a cudgel to fight against a sitting president. Remember Juanita Broderick. Remember Kathleen Willey. Remember that no matter how many times people tell you how bad Trump is, he never forced himself on Stormy Daniels like Clinton did to all those other women. And remember, the same media, the same exact people sometimes, who covered for Bill Clinton forcing himself on numerous women, while...
And that's that. I mean, first off, I want to call out to Bella in the Twitch chat. She commented the sigil was done freehand with a cauterizing pen. Though with a squiring woman being held down, they will not be the same. Not a uniform branding iron used. Where are you getting that from? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't actually seen that information. That's interesting. I mean, I'm no medical professional, but I would imagine that would leave some kind of a regular scar. It wouldn't be uniform. That being said, just when you thought the news couldn't get any fucking weirder, right?
Talking about scars. Lovely.
Pretty ridiculous. Not just scars, but imagine this. I mean, if we really want to start, talking about, putting our conspiracy helmets on here, they're finding ties between NXIVM and the Clinton Foundation. So tenuous as that may be, we may be looking back on this podcast in a few months and seeing that maybe we were more right than not.
Thanks, Bella.
Maybe we need a red book.
Well, so there's even mainstream media reports about NXIVM, about women who have come out against that guy and explained exactly how they got their scars and how it's a combination of the initials of the dude in charge. I can't remember his name right now, and the Allison Mack.
So then he would just be like writing them out drunk or something? Or is this some kind of Heath Ledger thing? You know how I got these scars?
So he would not happen, and they had apparently 3 women hold like another woman down while they did it, and apparently the one woman said it was worse than childbirth because they did it with this little laser.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Oh, God.
All right, well, that is pretty much the end of our show. I think it's really nice when we can get independent content like this that actually is pretty comprehensive. So I think we're going to try to do what we can to support independent media, and we'll try to clip pieces from them and then credit back. I mean, we don't charge anything here. It's 100% follower supported. So honestly, we're just giving away free advertisement, I guess, when it comes to that stuff.
Absolutely.
What do you guys think?
Absolutely, I agree.
All right. Well, that being said, I think that we can kind of give ourselves a little bit of an outro here. I guess until next week. Keep an eye on the news. Tell you what you need to know.
Trying all to figure it out. One day at a time. Need to Know podcast signing out. Everybody watching out there on YouTube, on Twitch, and everybody who's in the chat, feel free to join us in the Discord chat. Hopefully I believe we have the links up on all of those profiles. That's episode 1 here, ladies and gentlemen. Friday, May the 11th. Y'all have a nice evening, spend some time with your family, buy some water. Y'all have a nice one.